Hello. I promised that I would do a review of Amazon Prime Video's Lord of the Rings of Power, Episode 6. And it's been a few days now since it dropped. I've listened to a lot of other reviews, and I'll incorporate some of the more interesting comments that I heard online. There's no way I can cover everything that I'd like to cover. I tried doing this once already, and I spent 45 minutes. You may notice that the image I have in the background is this broken blade that apparently Sauron created. I'm just going to call it a Morgul blade, okay? After the blade in the Lord of the Rings, although that blade was more icy, and this blade seems fiery, and it has to be activated by blood. But we'll come back to that later. So, for 5 episodes out of 8 for the season, what we had was mostly people sitting around or standing around and talking, interspersed with occasional action. With episode 6, now we have a lot of action interspersed with some dialogue. And what episode 6 has proven, if there was any doubt left, is that the showrunners, aka writers, directors, are just as bad at action as they are at dialogue. Uh, it's pretty sad. So I'll go over some of the key points. As one reviewer or a couple of reviewers have noted, where did the money go? If it looks like Amazon probably spent around $26 million per episode for this season. Where did they spend it? They sure didn't spend a lot of money on the the writers, aka showrunners, writer director, who have never done much before and are proving that they can't handle this either. I don't think they spent very much money on the actual filming. They didn't spend a lot of money on props. Uh, Computer graphics have gotten less and less expensive with each passing year and capable of doing more and more with less and less money. So where did all the money go? How much money does it take to do some background shots of locations in New Zealand? Which leads to well, one reviewer speculated, and I'm by no means saying that this is the case. This is just what speculation that I heard online. He was saying basically, I can't imagine how they could spend this much money per episode and come up with this. He says, I've seen, uh, you know, movies from the 1990s that looked better than this. I've seen made-for-TV movies uh, that are much better than this with way less money. He says, maybe this is a money laundering scheme to divert millions of dollars more into Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos's attempt to colonize space. Blue Origin keeps falling behind SpaceX. Not saying that's true, but not at all. But boy, have they wasted a lot of money per episode. Now I also hear that they're going to move the production for season 2 to a new location outside London. Why? Because they're going to use this studio for multi-program filming and production. Really. But so I've heard also that Bezos threatened that if Rings of Power was a failure, he might just terminate all future original content for Amazon Prime Video. Really? But you're building a whole new studio anyhow. At what? Just to Will it end up being just a complete season 2 of something with a dwindling audience? I don't know. Amazon was always about bringing stuff, good products at the lowest price to the consumer. Here it seems to be about spending the maximum price possible for video episodes of low quality. Okay, so let's try to cover some of the action here and some of the flaws. The villagers, the humans in the south, was really in the Mordor area. They had this village. It apparently is just on the west side of the north-south mountain range. That's a border of Mordor. They're on the side that would face the river Anduin and what will later be Gondor. And remember, they all fled to this tower built by the elves. That tower is not far from what will later be Minas Morgul, one of the two main entrances into Mordor. That one from the west, and then Udun is from the northwest corner. And this whole episode is called Udun, even though it doesn't seem to be taking place in Udun. Anyhow, the villagers fled from when they found there were orcs invading. They fled to this tower, but then they say, "Hey, wait! There's too few of us, and we can't defend this tower against a horde of orcs either." Well, they could have just fled the whole area, right? But they didn't. No, instead, when they see the orcs approaching in episode 5, it doesn't look like the orcs are very far away. What, maybe 2 miles, a mile? I mean, and there's only one way path in and out. This is a very narrow entrance through the mountains to the tower. But somehow the villagers all magically teleported themselves back to the village, which had been abandoned, and which, by the way, only seems to consist of 3 structures. How does a village of only 3 structures, one of which is a tavern, and it's got stone walls, the others are wood and a little wooden fence, how does that constitute a village of several hundred villagers, half of which defected to Adar and the orcs? Anyhow, they teleported themselves back behind the orcs. Meanwhile, Irondir, in the hours or maybe a day that he had left before the orcs attacked the tower, he magically rigged the entire tower so that one flaming arrow hitting one rope and the entire tower will come crashing down on Adar and the orcs, who, by the way, aren't even wearing any armor. So Adar is at the head of the column attacking, and he doesn't even have any body armor on. One arrow could kill him in a heartbeat. And Irondir, we remember, is an expert marksman, right? But no, he doesn't shoot anything at Adar. So, okay, the whole tower, built by elves who were great craftsmen, collapses when one rope is hit. And but there's still the other half of the orcs. So what do? They turn around and go back to the village just because? I don't know. They realize the villagers went somewhere, but if they were smart villagers, they would have gone far away rather than just back to the village behind. Well, most of the action in this entire episode is shot in the dark. Now, maybe the ostensible reason is because, the orcs can't stand sunlight, but the orcs they're not like vampires. Not Tolkien's orcs anyhow. They're not like vampires. They don't burn in the sunlight. They just don't necessarily like the sunlight, but there were plenty of battles between orcs and elves, orcs and men, orcs and dwarves fought in the daylight. The real reason they're filming all this action in the dark is to avoid bad choreographing, so that most of the participants in what's supposed to be a battle can stand around picking their noses, or, you know, standing and watching the action rather than doing anything, and you don't really notice because it's dark. Yeah, you do see the characters that are smack in front of the camera. You see, a couple of people interacting badly. So the action sequences remind us of Galadriel training the Numenorian recruits in the episode before, and the magnificently ludicrous action sequence there where she's kicking the butts of 8 humans simultaneously. And even if they were raw recruits, when you have 3 of them behind her, all 3 of them could have struck her from behind while she was facing other guys in front. But no, all she has to do is hold the sword backwards, and they're immediately terrified and they back off. And commentators said, look, their swords were nowhere near to touching her at all, and half the guys are just standing around when they're supposedly fighting her. And the actress herself said, they want me to fight with 2 swords. I can't even write a letter with my left hand, but now I don't know how I'm going to do sword play. Well, she didn't really. That's the problem. The director said, it looks incredibly complicated on the screen, but it was so easy to shoot. Of course, it's so easy to shoot a bad action sequence. Did they even train any of these characters in how to use a sword? If so, they sure didn't spend much time. Awkward. He said they'd filmed almost all of it in one take. I believe it. Watching the fights, I believe these were filmed in one take. So the same poor action values take place in this entire episode 6. Like Irondir and the huge orc that looks more like troll size than orc size. Oh, the troll is just standing behind him until he's finished with whatever he was doing in front of him, and then the troll grabs him from behind. Oh, and the troll doesn't even have any weapon at all. I guess he's just relying on his brute strength, which admittedly could snap Arondir like a twig. The orc is so big, but what does he do instead of breaking his neck or something? He just keeps throwing him around. He keeps throwing him around until Arondir finally forces him into something a little more physical than that by stabbing him in the eye. And then, if you saw it, you know what I'm talking about. Ludicrous combat. The best acting in this episode, far as I'm concerned, was by the actor playing Adar. He did a good job. If only all the rest of the acting were up to that. And of course, he couldn't write his own lines, but the way he delivered his lines, the expressions on his face, great job. Great job with what you had. That was the best performance. This I'm calling it the Morgul blade. What's behind me there? Arondir said, "Well, I think it's some kind of a key." Well, yeah, but it's also a blade, right? Oh, it's like a Swiss Army knife. It's a blade and a key, and who knows what else. Anyhow, Adar really does this transparent setup when he hands that blade wrapped in some cloth to whatever that the bad human that went to his side with half the villagers, Wolfgar or whatever, I can't think of his name, hands it to him and says, I got something, I got a mission for you. So later when he's captured, well, big reveal, anyhow, the humans take this bundle of cloth. Nobody looks in it to see what it is. but they know that it's supposed to be something of great evil, something that Adar wanted, desperately wanted. And then Theo, who admits that when he had it, when he had this dagger, he felt drawn to its power, tempted by its power. So what does Aaron do? Arondir do? He gives the bundle to Theo. Oh, well, if you feel tempted by this evil power, why don't you take it and give it to the Numenorians, and they'll throw it in the ocean on their way back to Numenor. That is, if you ever get around to giving it to them rather than just keeping it. And Theo, the 16-year-old kid or whatever he is the only one smart enough to actually open the cloth and say, hey, wait, it was a switcheroo. All I've got here is a cheap hand axe. Where did the real thing go? Oh, yeah, well, what's his name took the real thing, got some blood on it, stuck it in the ground. It's a key, right? It's a key. So it opens up this dam that we didn't know anything about. We see water rushing out. There's no Mount Doom in the background. The water must be rushing in some other direction, and yet somehow it's working its way into the bowels of Mount Doom. Where? No clue. And this causes the entire volcano to erupt. How does that work? Well, the water wasn't under pressure. You only get a really sizable explosion if lava with water mixed in is under pressure and finally finds a way to the surface. Here, what you would have had would be just a huge steam explosion if it happened the way they were showing it happen. But no, it triggers a big pyroclastic explosion of Mount Doom. So the big thing that happened in episode 6 is we got Mount Doom. And I'm calling this entire season 1 of the Rings of Power, it's the Mount Doom of the whole season. It's like disaster. So that's it. That's essentially what happened. Now there's 2 episodes left, and what are they going to do with those 2 episodes? One guy theorized, well, this may be pretty much the end of the storyline with Arondir and Bronwyn for now, for this season. So we're going to probably go back to the Harfoots and Meteor Man again, and some further plot development of what Meteor Man's going to do, whether he's supposed to be Gandalf or Saruman or somebody else. And back to, of course, Elrond and Durin. And they'll probably have the dwarves making mithril weapons for the elves, and they'll unleash a Balrog, and that might be, the last episode of season 1 will be the Balrog threatening to wipe out all of Khazad Dûm till they manage to seal him off or something. That may be a spectacular looking scene, certainly. It would be fitting end for season 1. But we may see some more actions in Numenor. Perhaps Pharazôn thinking about taking power while Queen Regent is off in Middle Earth here. Perhaps a lot of the Numenorian people are going to be pressuring him. You need to take charge here, and we don't like those elves anyhow. This is part of the corruption of Numenor plot. The biggest question still left for this season 1 is, who is Sauron? So many people keep saying that Halbrand is Sauron. Well, do they know? Or maybe they know more about the plot than I do. Are they guessing right? The plot may indeed turn Halbrand into Sauron. I don't think it should. I don't think Halbrand should be Sauron. He starts out, on a little raft then the raft gets torn apart by that sea serpent, and he ends up with Galadriel, and then they end up getting picked up by a Numenorian ship and brought back to Numenor. And how would he know that all that would happen in advance? He really seemed like a refugee, not a Sauron. And Sauron is supposed to be like the elves, a being that has lived for thousands of years. Uh, he's Halbrand doesn't show any sign of that. Of course, I got to, like I admitted, the elves don't show much signs of their age either. Look at the way Galadriel's acting. She's acting like an autistic 7-year-old, not somebody that's thousands of years old. But I know one of those creepy clerics that looked at the crater that Meteor Man made. He or she looked much more like a Sauron in human disguise than Halbrand. I still keep thinking that I don't know what they're going to do with Halbrand. If he's not Sauron, he may in the end turn into one of the 9 human kings that Sauron corrupts by giving them a ring of power. That might end up being his fate. I don't know. But that's the big mystery that's left, is where's Sauron? Now we have Mount Doom, and his hand was behind it all, but we don't know how. That's about all. I guess that's about all that's worth saying for Rings of Power Season 1, Doom.